Okay, it is 5 o'clock, so please rise and join me for the pledge of the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll have our open forum at this time. Is there anyone that would like to come forward and address the board at this time? Okay. Now we have celebrating our community successes, and with the Albert Lee Education Foundation, we have Lila Oz, who's been the president for how many years?
8 or 9?
9 years. So.
Okay then. So it does give me great pleasure to talk about Lila a little bit. Lila is a retired English teacher from Albert Lee High School, and she said it's unfortunate Neil isn't here to talk about some of their fun and games when they both taught at Albert Lee together. So Lila is one of those people, when she was a teacher, who would take on many roles in the community and in the school community in particular. Were you the one-act play director when you were still teaching?
No.
Okay,
My
so
late husband was, and I was like his assistant.
So she has been the one-act play director for many years and is looking at giving it up. But she's also one of those people that fills in a void when somebody needs to step up. She has been on the Albert Lee Foundation, Education Foundation since its inception?
No, since 2004.
But you've been on for a long, long time, 10 years, yes. And she also sits as one of our members of the Greater Education Project and works with us trying to reach out to the community for more opportunities for our students. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank her for all of her work and hope she reconsiders that one-act play. No. So congratulations and thank you, Lila. Do you want to say anything?
Well, thank you, Kathy and school board, Dr. Funk. I said the opening day of school that once you're retired, it's like everybody wants you, but that eventually I learned you have to just keep those things in your life for which you have a passion. And the education in Albert Lee School District has been a passion. Serving on the Education Foundation Board has been one of my absolute greatest joys, and every spring I absolutely love the fact that we get to give away a lot of money in scholarships. We get to give money to teachers for grants, and we are able to support needy children through one of our funds. And so it's just a joy, and it's going to be one of the things that's going to be really tough for me to eventually step away from, but there it will be. So thank you very much.
I'm going to have a little advertisement here also on September 14th, the Education Foundation has their annual banquet, so we certainly ask that those that are interested to come that evening. We have a forum that begins at 4:30, and we'll be talking about the Greater Education Project, and then we honor some of our alumni that have had great successes in life. So certainly ask that others come. It's a great evening. So thanks, Lila, for putting up with me all these years.
Oh, thank you. And with a student of mine.
Okay, we better move on. Okay, I would take a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Okay, the motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. A motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we have our consent items that are listed and had time to review, so I would entertain a motion there. Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second to that motion? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor of approving the consent items signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to reports, we'll start with Dr. Funk.
All right, since today is our first day of school, I thought I'd just give a quick enrollment update. Actually, this was as of this midday, there we had 67 students that we've added to the district since July 1st. Actually, we've added probably a few more since then. I think we had 5 or 6 more today in addition to that. And so our K-12 enrollment is 3356. With our early childhood numbers and our ALC numbers, we're at 3604 as a school district. Interestingly enough, when I think Alberta High School was built in 2001, I think the capacity was 1,400. Now that we have the eighth graders at the high school, we have now capped 1,300 for the first time since I've been here. So that's another positive sign. I mentioned we have a lot of students enrolled. We green-lighted a section today, an additional one today, as we had 8 new kindergarten students enroll at Hawthorne since last Monday. So the target for kindergarten is 22 kids in a class, and with those 8 students, I think we were at over 24 in a class. So we did that, and then same thing, we've had a lot of new students enroll at Sibley, and we added a first grade section there last week. And you know, we are very methodical when we're making these decisions, and Lori and I communicate on the finances to make sure that we are staying within our targets and within our budget. And because of the increased enrollment, we're still good with those recent adds. So it's a positive trend for the school district, as we have, this is, I think, the most students we've had on day one since I've been here. So that's a brief report tonight from me.
Thank you. Next, we have our board member reports. I can't remember which side I started on last time. So, yeah, any volunteers?
I attended the Family Services Collaborative. They have several new board members, and they're working through policies, making sure they're up to date. Thanks.
Just the one report I want to make, and Steve is here. Just wanted to say I was updated today by one of our employees that the parking lot at Hawthorne School is shut down to parents. I think that's really a good thing for safety. So I just heard that, and I said I would report that tonight. So thank you.
I guess the only thing I have to report is the Greater Education Project. The Elberly Education Foundation has agreed to fund that again this year, so we'll have Jean Eaton that will be working. I think it was very successful last year and really growing, so I think that's great that's coming back again. It's a good thing for our district. So, and then Al, do you want to give us a teacher's report, please?
Sure. It's been busy this last week and a half. And I tell you, you have a dedicated staff. Everybody in the whole district. I just drove by on the way here, and there's still 15 cars at Southwest. And they've been working hard, getting ready with the orientations, the mentoring. The one thing that we are doing with the ALEA, they're getting ready for now, is we have we give out 2 $750 scholarships, education scholarships each year. And the way that we've started now, we used to do it differently. Now we're raising money through the Gobble Wobble. So you might be hearing stuff about that. It's a fun run track thing in November. And we raised quite a bit of money last year, so we're going to keep working on that. And hopefully we can start getting more out for these scholarships. That's about it.
Thanks, Al. We definitely appreciate the dedication that our teachers have, and it's always a big day when we start school. And I did participate in that trot last year. That was fun. So, okay, moving on to curriculum and instruction, success coach update. Mary Jo Dorman.
Also with me tonight is Kasi Yar, and she is one of our success coaches. And she's going to share some things as well tonight. So she'll do that in just a minute. The purpose of our success coaches, I'll just start with that, is really to close the economic gap and promote integration within the district. And the funding to do that comes from a Minnesota grant called the Achievement and Integration Grant. And it's designated to Albert Lea schools because we are a racially isolated district. And I took out a Minnesota statute what that actually means. And basically, it's when surrounding school districts around us have less than that, let me back up, when we have more than a 20% ethnic gap compared to our surrounding districts. And so we don't apply for this grant. We get this grant based on our high need population. And in the past, it's a 3-year grant cycle. In the past, Austin Public Schools managed this grant for us, and we paid a stipend to them. And this time, since we are considered a racially isolated district ourselves, we now manage the grant just in-house. So there's no money being sent to Austin schools to run the grant. Yeah, it is good news. Thank you. And a big portion of that grant funding goes to the success coaches. So then we say, okay, who are these success coaches? We have 9 of them currently in the district, both Korean speaking and Spanish speaking, bilingual, some are multilingual staff members. And so I thought rather than me explaining what they're doing on a daily basis, I'll ask one of them to come in and explain to you. So again, this is Kasi, fabulous, fabulous employee. And I'll say she does this to me every time right before we come up. I'm really nervous to do this. So just thanks for being here, Kasi. And they're not really funny.
I would like to introduce myself. My name is Kasi Yar, and my native language is Karen. Karen is people that come from Thailand, and because of the war and conflicts in Burma, so we moved to Thailand, and then we relocated in refugee camps. There are about 8 refugee camps, and then you will be seeing more Karen families moving into Albert Lea every year. When I started school in Albert Lea, there were only like 3 Karen students, but we still like several this day. So basically, I came from Mela refugee camp to St. Paul in 2008, and then we lived in St. Paul for 2 years, and then I moved down to Albert Lea, where I started in 11th grade. And it is where I met Mrs. Dorman. She was my reading teacher, and then she helped me pass my MCA so I can go to college. So, and then I came here when I was in 11th grade, and then I graduated in 2012 in ELHS. So who are our success coaches? Success coaches, what we do basically is like we help students and families to increase communication for the benefit and student learning. We communicate with everything because of the bilingual. So I think that is why they have success coaches. So we work 35 hours a week. Last year, we worked only 25 hours because of the increase in students and family needs, so they added more hours to us. So we work in the classroom to support students with language needs or other needs that will support student learning directed by the classroom teachers. We make phone calls to families in the language of the parent. The calls are for both positive calls home, school updates, like if a student is sick, they will call us so we can call the family, and other communication to the family that needs to be discussed. So families call success coaches with any school questions. They even call us in evening, outside of school hours. They can call us anytime, because we give their cell phone number to them. We don't know when they will have a question, so we give them our cell phone numbers. We interpret for all the teachers during parents' meeting, conferences, orientations, and etc. So we provide community outreach. For example, at church, Mrs. Dorme and Joanna Thomas, the helpers and principal, they went to the church, so to help out families, to share any information that we need to know before school starts. So, and then we also provide sport help professional developments for all for staff. So, like an example, if a classroom has a current student, a teacher might not know where the student is coming from. So we talk to the teacher, we share our culture, so they know how to work with student and the best way to help them. Thank you.
The other things that she didn't mention is, again, just success coaches have added a lot of value to the district, being able to really communicate with families. And even so much that, Kasi knows many of the families that she could predict some of the families. She said, here's some families I know moving from New York, or when a lot of current families were coming to Albert Lea, they were going from Thailand, the refugee camp, to St. Paul as kind of the first stop, and then settled there, and then they moved to Albert Lea. And now St. Paul has kind of been eliminated because she said families are telling other families Albert Lea has been a very welcoming district to come to. So we have families, and Albert Lea Select Jobs has quite a few jobs as well to support the income for families. So they're coming right from Thailand to Albert Lea. And so it's nice to be able to know, kind of predict what we're seeing. And like she said, when she was hired as a success coach, 3 Karen families or students, and now we're over 200. So what questions do you have for Kasi? Any other things you want to know about success coaches?
I guess I don't have a question, but what an amazing story, and thank you so much. It sounds like you do a whole bunch, and I'm sure all the other success coaches do too, especially giving your cell phone number out and being willing to take calls in the evening. That's amazing. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
I was going to say the same thing, and then before Sam walked in, I mean, this community needs to know this story. So I'd love to see this in the paper somehow. It's a great story. It's so positive. So Sam, are you taking notes over there? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question for you. What did you do after high school, out of curiosity?
I went to a community college where I graduated in radiography, and then I went to college one more year, and then I quit school last year. So I work here.
The one opportunity, because Kasi is a great student, and this woman has a heart of gold. I mean, I would take her for my daughter any day. I mean, she's an awesome individual to work with. She inspires me. But one of the things that we've been talking to as a district is, Kasi, have you ever thought about going back to school to get your teaching license? And so we're working on that process of, she has her 2-year degree. How do we support a person like Kasi to go back so we can mirror more teachers in our buildings of the students that we're serving? And so we're getting closer to that opportunity, I think. Right?
I don't know.
I have a question. Kasi, what do you see are some of the biggest challenges for students and families coming from other cultures?
The most important challenge will be a language barrier because most of the Korean families, Korean parents, they don't know any English at all. Not just the language, but the culture also. Like you will see in Korean families, most of the mothers, they don't know how to drive. They are scared, they're afraid of police, and that they don't know how. So only dad, is the head of the family. Dad is the only one that can take them anywhere, like conferences or go anywhere. Only the dad that can drive in most of the Korean families. Basically, like culture and language.
Are you able to not only work with the students, but work then with the parents with communication gaps and things like that also?
Yes, we work with all the family members from pre-K to 12th grade. We communicate with families every day when we need to. So, yeah.
So were you busy today? Because I was at Halverson today, and we had some Korean parents in the office, and they were trying to get a hold of a translator so that they could help with their students get registered.
Yeah, I was at Southwest, and
Okay.
it was busy because it is the first day of the year, of the school year. So,
Our success coaches are also really good. Before we do, she mentioned that they'll interpret at conferences. The success coaches are also calling all the families in their native language as a reminding, here's your time, making sure it's clear, because obviously if we're sending things out in English. And they can translate docs, but Kasi, really under her direction, said, you know, when she's translating a document, she said, this could take me 2 hours, because their language very complicated. And so we're like, okay, let's not spend time that. We have more value than that. Let's take that to phone calls. That way we know parents are getting it, and touching base with all the families. So we've really, through Kasi's direction, have really said phone call, phone call, phone call. And I think that's what Corinne families are so amazed by. They're getting phone calls from these success coaches all the time with updates and news. And so teachers were also giving, in the elementary schools, Kasi their like weekly newsletter or updates that a classroom teacher may do. And so we just told the teachers, you know what, this would have her busy, 100 hours a week translating all these classroom newsletters. Just give her the highlights of what families need to know. She can read this in 5 minutes and then go on to the next family. So that's a direction. Again, that's because of her input and what families really need. So that's why it's been a great partnership. She knows what the families want, and we're trying to meet the needs.
And then you had mentioned there's like 9 different success coaches for the Corinne families, or just the one?
There's 3 right now. They're stretched very thin. We have 6 Spanish-speaking success coaches, 3 Corinne, but we will be, we're posting this week for another Corinne success coach.
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
As Mark said, it's a great story. Next, we have Kathy Niebor, and she's going to talk about structured professional development review.
So last spring, when looking at the calendar, the learning team spent a lot of time talking about what should professional development look like for staff. And one of the things they asked is that we recapture the 16 hours that formerly were flex days. So that really came out of learning team. And then we took some of the ideas that came out of learning team as discussion, as well as some of the administrative needs for professional development, and we provided a day 1, day 2 on Monday and Tuesday, or a day 1, day 2 on Thursday and Friday. So for our new teachers, and our mentors, they were in new teacher workshops Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and they participated then Thursday, Friday. Otherwise, staff who weren't participating in that could participate Monday and Tuesday. One of the areas all of our staff were provided training with out of Safe Schools dollars was the ALICE training, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Mary Jo then led a kind of do you know your district Jeopardy type format for our staff. Then in the afternoon we broke up. On the first day, secondary talked about e-learning and they had work time, and elementary did some training, fast training and PLC work in their building. Then on day 2, secondary took a look at the new MDE data release, which was released that week. And then we also looked at some new data formats, the SLEDS data, which I was talking to Kevin Gens at the high school, and he was very impressed at the opportunity to see some of that post-secondary data of our students after they leave Albert Lea High School. What are they doing? What are they choosing? And then the elementary teacher leaders led groups of training on responsive classroom and some mathematics instruction. The high school moved on to some discussion on the ACEs, training and trauma-informed schools, and we used the second video after Paper Tigers was made on resilience. It's an hour-long video. We own it for a year, so our 3 secondary schools watched that video, which really talked a lot about what can we do in the schools, what can we do as a community. And then in the afternoon, the secondary had a community Partners Resource Panel. And so our truancy officers, Lana Howe presented, we had the county nurse, we had the Crime Victims Crisis Center come and speak. One of the people that was able to make it Tuesday and not Friday was Dana Nelson on child protection, and she really did an excellent job talking to our teachers about what does it look like when filing a child protection report. So just really talking about what are those community resources that our secondary staff in particular can partner with. And then the elementary worked on building, they had building work, they went back to their buildings on the day too. So we had some good feedback on this training, which is the ALICE training, Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. It really is a lockdown plus situation. So what else can we be doing in schools and elsewhere to be more proactive in protecting ourselves and our students against active shooter violence? 14 administrators went to training and trained to become trainers. So we can train our staff. We can't go out and train anybody in the community, but we can train our staff. The day one, the online training our staff did was a little rough. We had some problems with our firewall, getting the links in. So it's a blended learning where we do some training and then they do online training. And then as a community, in our case as a school district, we'll talk about what are we going to do next. And this is really based on 20 years of real active shooter events, mostly since Columbine. What is really working in schools and what isn't working in schools? I got some really nice emails back from some more seasoned teachers who said, you know, I always thought I was doing the right thing when I told students to duck and get under the table. And after experiencing this training, even that brief morning, I just realized there's so many other things we could be doing to help our staff and our students be more proactive. So some appreciative comments back from that. We also did a review at the secondary level, and about 87% of the teachers found it very valuable and want more, those that responded. Minnesota requires 5 lockdown drills each year, so that will be one of the next things we start talking about. So this is the model. It's a blended model, long-term implementation. Alice really recommends starting early, having discussions. We felt that we couldn't really have a discussion with teachers until they had the training. So that was our first spot. Our first discussion was, let's get teachers trained, and then we can talk about ongoing district level discussions. So involving Steve Anderson, the safety committee, we're going to bring it to learning team in September. What kinds of things can we that teachers learn can we work on now? What does barricading a room look like? A lot of our teachers said, I didn't even think about that before. I just locked my door. So starting to have those discussions. We need to have parent communication. We need to be proactive in reaching out to groups and start having these conversations. Communication with other emergency staff in the community about the model. Ted Herman, I believe, is going to one of the area trainings for the Freeborn County, but then we're also sending him to the ALICE training. And then in January, we'll do some on-site scenario training with 3 national trainers, and that's what we'll be talking about at Learning Team. But overall, what I heard from staff was this really was about empowering staff to make decisions and not just run and hide. So as I said, we have 14 certified trainers in the district. Our discussion will be how do we facilitate the transition to proactive options based on response versus traditional mandated lockdown. We need to start having stakeholder meetings with our teachers, and they're the only group that went through the online training. Our secretaries are asking, our district office staff are asking. So that needs to now be a discussion at Learning Team. How do we move forward with it? And so that was that was the first morning that all of our staff were involved with that ALICE training.
Can you click on that link, actually? What's it saying?
Could I ask a question about that since we're transitioning? How about substitute teachers? How in-depth will they get?
So that's a great question because the information out of Sandy Hook, one of the rooms where many children were killed was a substitute teacher. And so definitely on our radar is something to talk about, how do we move forward and provide assistance to our substitute teachers. We learned a lot at the Walker training. I will say I was one of those people that was a little hesitant to go participate in it. Didn't really see it as something that I could engage in or really thought much about, but it was fascinating to listen to the Columbine scenarios, the Sandy Hook scenarios. We ran some scenarios, we did some training, we practiced how do you train people. There were three Cass County law enforcement folks there and a couple of hospital people there from Cuyuna Range. There was, and they were very fascinated to find out what schools do. Really had no idea that schools had lockdown drills, and this facility that was represented there, they're just in the beginning. But the police, there was also a school resource officer there. There was a security officer there from Red Lake High School. And their input and as part of the discussion was really fascinating. One of the drills we ran, Lori was in on it, where one of the police officers, and it was a real drill out of a real situation, and he came in and he followed one group that ran one way and then the other group evacuated that we were in the other way. And he said, as a trained police officer, he never even noticed that other group running out of the room. He was so focused on this group going down the hallway. So, but yeah, some of the information coming out of this 20 years of discussion was substitute teachers and secretaries and office staff and custodians. And so I think that all of us know that this desk isn't going to protect us or our children, but we've pretended it for 20 years that this is what's best. So it was good. It was very good information.
Okay, the purpose was this, just to communicate more out to all staff about all the different programming going on in the district, because I think, well, I'll get to it. I had a learning target for staff, and the learning target was I can learn more about the Albert Lea Area School District and be an ambassador in the community supporting and representing this great district. You know, we have so many things going on in the district, and if you're in one building, you may not know what's going on in another building, or what community ed's doing, or what does VPK even mean? So that was the intent of putting it in just a game format. And so we're not going to do the game here with you, but I think a couple things to show you what the learning was about. Could you click on the first $100? Well, I got some questions for the school board here. So the answer is 24 languages. So what do you think the question was? Board, anybody? Yes. So we have 24 languages, and then will you click on the language counts? And then we showed staff what the breakdown is so they can see the impact. Okay, well, I don't know why it came up so small, but basically about 3,000 English-speaking, and then Spanish-speaking students is about 300, and Karen, 147. So you can see, again, the impact of even what Kasi said of 5 years ago or 4 years ago, we had 3. We're up to 147. So, and the rest of the languages are less than 10. Went past that list there, and I can't read it, sorry. Okay, that's good on that one, Ashley. And then, yep. Then go to, yep. Answer when you know it. Yep, it was Success Coaches, and the purpose to bring that up is to make sure teachers understand how they should be using Success Coaches, making phone calls, both good news, areas of concern, just general information, as well as they can support classroom teachers working in the classrooms. And so it was just a little discussion about Success Coaches. Okay, we can go to the next one. Okay. This is the answer. Yep, so this is our new number for this year. So we get this from MDE, and yes. And we'll do one more. Yes, good job. And then, and several speakers got up during this to explain more. So Tanya Prouty did a great job of talking about all the things happening at the ALC, as well as sharing some of the successes of the graduates last year, et cetera. Chris Chalmers went through all the community ed things out there and how teachers can be more, just, he had a great thing. Jenny Hansen spoke about all the early childhood, VPK, all those learning opportunities. And Tammy L spoke about any SPED updates. So that was just kind of a get to know your district. So that was about 1 hour of the entire training.
And then the last thing that staff wanted at the beginning of the year, and we weren't able to offer it, is they're now all required to have 1 hour of suicide prevention training, a minimum, in addition to the mental health requirement that's been there in the past. So, and we're very fortunate, Sandy Sorensen is on one of the advisory committees in the community. So on October 11th, we'll be offering that at Albert Lee High School in the auditorium for that 1 hour of suicide prevention. It'll be after school, and NAMI's going to come in and do that for us. So I think I think a lot of those mandatory CE units were covered in some of this training, and we continue to do more of that. And then this newest one, I think we'll have a great resource from Sandy and her work with NAMI. So.
Any questions or comments? Looked like you had some full days, so a lot of preparation. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Funk, mission and goals update.
So, I had the opportunity to meet with the entire staff, as I do every school year, and they were so impressed with some of my artwork, I thought I'd come and share it with the board tonight. So basically what I want to go over, really kind of a change in focus for the district and how we're operating. And I think the first slide up there is the board-approved mission statement from sometime in the past year and a half. We went through the process and developing a new mission. And when I talked to the staff and when I talked to the new teachers the week before that, I thought the most interesting part of that slide, there's two words that I think are fascinating on that slide. One is ensure. So we as a district want to ensure that these things happen. And the other thing on that slide that I think is very pertinent and interesting is growth. We're talking about individual growth. We're talking about meeting the needs of our district and our students. And we're not talking about necessarily proficiency. We're talking about growth. We want our kids to be proficient, but we want them to grow. And so it's refreshing if you look at it from we're here to help kids and staff, people learn, and we want them to grow. And we're not focused on proficient numbers like so much of our society is. So I think that's just it's a great statement, and it's something that we're going back to as we move forward with the district this year. So I read a book this summer on called One Mission, and it's basically how people operate differently than we have historically within a bureaucratic organization. Historically, we've been top-down. School districts have, most organizations have been in the United States, where the administration or the management team makes decisions and things are directed downward. And whether it's IBM, Albert Lee area schools, Mayo Clinic, decisions are made, and then teams operate within those within silos, oftentimes within the corporation. And so when I came to Albert Lee, it was pretty interesting because we didn't really have a strong central focus. We had a lot of silos going on, but there wasn't a strong central focus. Well, what I would say now, over 8 years' time, we do have a strong central approach to things. But with that strong centralized approach, I think we're not as effective at problem solving as we could be. And so here's where the artwork comes in. So here's how Mike Funk sees the world, if you can understand that here. But we have a school board who hires a superintendent who has different departments: facilities, transportation, HR, finance, special ed, curriculum committees, learning teams, and we have the buildings along the bottom there in green, and then we have professional learning communities that occur within each of those buildings. And really, all of those things do one thing: we try to achieve our mission of ensuring growth within our district. But it's really a top-down approach, and there's not a lot of I would say collaborative feedback throughout the entire system. There may be feedback within a building, there may be feedback within PLCs, but there is not feedback systemically within the entire building. So the proposal is we realign how we operate, and as I said to the group last week, we are probably next to Mayo. We have as many, if not more than, college-educated people within our community working for our school district. And so, yeah, we fail to really tap into the talent level of all the great employees we have in this district. And so we have not been problem solving at the lowest levels for the benefit of the district. Maybe in isolation we have. So really what the shift is, it's focusing on problem solving at all levels of the district. We develop feedback mechanisms to identify solutions that best meet the needs of our staff and our students. We develop leadership teams in our buildings that are focused on our mission rather than administrivia. How are we improving student learning? How are we really improving our staff development processes? One thing that was occurring within the district when I got here is we had these grade level teams that would meet from across the district with each other. And so all the first grade teachers would get together, all the second grade teachers would get together, and then they talk about what's going on in the buildings. And it wasn't real effective because kind of the buildings were doing different things, and so we did away with it. Last year we tried it again with Mary Jo's leadership, and we found out, hey, that this is pretty effective because we are more centralized, and now we're seeing different buildings tackle issues a little bit differently that we can share from each other. So that's kind of a cross approach to doing things. Same thing at the secondary level. I don't know how much talk goes on between what happens at Albert Lea High School and what happens at Southwest Middle School, but I think we can do a better job at the department level, at the secondary level of integrating that way. We have a learning team that meets, and it's a majority of teachers. There's one more teacher, I think, than administrators on that learning team. And it's a great opportunity, I think, to really take what's going on in our building leadership teams, bring them to the district level learning team, and start to identify some processes that can improve the district at a district-wide level. And then we have everybody now has Chromebooks within the school district, and so how can we utilize those? If PLCs are meeting on a Wednesday morning basis, okay, can we have a PLC from Hawthorne, a 4 or 5 PLC tap into a 4 or 5 PLC at Sibley to find out and discuss what's happening just through Google Hangouts and stuff like that. So that's the concept, and here's the drawing. Okay, so and this pointer doesn't work on the screen, but you still have the school board there setting policy, and then in the middle of it you have the district office and the learning team, and then around the perimeters you have our buildings in green. Okay, so the 7 buildings are there in green. And as you can see within the buildings, they have building leadership teams, they have PLCs, and the PLCs are now linked throughout the district. On the left-hand side, that's the grade level team meetings in purple there. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the department level meetings at the secondary level that can take place. And the BLTs all feed into the district learning team. So really what this is, it's re-looking at what our purpose is and what our ability to solve problems, and tapping into the talent base that we have in the school district, rather than the district administration and the school board providing intent, district administration implementing the intent, and then everybody else just saying, okay, we're going to do it, and we work in isolation. So this is a work in progress as far as what we're going to be working on from a management angle this year. So now with that, I have some goals that I've thought through that I'd like to share tonight. Part of this whole thing is, and we talked a little bit about it on Monday, and I know the buildings have been working on this, but we spent a bit of time this summer as an administrative team. If we're going to be doing some of these problem-solving things that are occurring, who are we as a school district? So if we can't answer who we are, then getting into a discussion on the best way to solve problems is going to be pretty ineffective. So we, as an administrative team, went through a values identification process. And now I know the buildings I know some of the buildings did it last week. I'm not sure if they all did yet. But what's important, what are some collective commitments that they can as a building? We're going to bring all that stuff together, and we're going to come and share it with the board here sometime yet this fall, so that the board can then say, okay, here's what the board's values are as a school system. One of the other things that I am working on, and I'll give you a great example of this right now, is coaching building leaders to implement decision-making at the site level to better meet the needs of our staff and students. And here's a great example. So we have class size targets in our district, and I think in grades 4 and 5, there are 30 kids is the cap in the class. And I have one of our buildings in the district has, in one of their grade levels, they're at 30, 31, right there, they're at the cap. And so I had a conversation today with the principal, because the principal is under the cap in one of their lower grades. And so I had the conversation with the principal today, and I said, okay, you're over the cap here, you're under here. Have you thought about what you want to do here? And, you know, the individual was like, well, what do you think I should do? And again, this is not Mike Funk telling it. I want to lead them through the process of, this is your building, you're the leader on the ground, I want you to work through this. So the feedback I gave the principal was, what does your building leadership team think about this? Well, we haven't discussed this as a building leadership team. So why don't you meet with your building leadership team? Here's the issue on the ground. If we have to shift a staff member, we'll shift a staff member. But get input from your building leadership team, and then your team makes a decision. Then it's not you making the decision. It's not Mike Funk making the decision. It's a collaborative decision between the stakeholders in the district. So examples like that and how we can coach and work with our leaders to effectively problem solve at the building level. So I think if we can, that's the best example I can give you right now, just from today on that's a change in the model. Because in the old model, it would have been, okay, well, what do you think? And I'll tell you what I think, and then boom, we would have done it. And there they are at the district office saying, all right, you know, Funk made the decision to do this. So it's a definite mindset shift for people. You know, the other things that go along with this is if we are doing these things and we're making the decisions At these levels, with the folks on the ground who know what's best for their building, we should be able to see, instead of sporadic growth, we should be able to see consistent growth at every grade level within the school district this school year. And then again, I think couple on here, or the next one up here is, before I get to that. Okay, so one of the things that when we're talking about, typically when we talk about data in the school district and how well the district is doing, I'll have Mary Jo or Kathy come up here and share with the board, here's what's happening in the district, and then we'll collectively talk about it. A change this year that we're going to implement, and we're going to start doing this in September, is at our study session, is I'd like the principal and maybe some members of their leadership team in 2 of their buildings, so we'll do 2 buildings in September, 2 buildings in October, 2 buildings in November, to come and provide feedback to the board on how we're doing over the past few years on our growth goals and our proficiency goals as a school. And so that way you can hear and have conversation right with the building leadership team on what they're trying to do. And again, this provides more ownership for everybody involved there. So that'll be a change that we have not done that, at least at the board level before. Operationally, we're going to continue to maintain our fund balance at the board level at 14%. And then I think you're going to hear probably a little bit from Steve here tonight on some of the facilities issues, but we have to come up with a strategy to get our community involved in improving the antiquated Hammer complex. And I know Steve and Mark Gross-Klaus and Afton Wachholz are meeting later this week to talk about what that looks like. And but we're gonna, and Ken, you and I had a conversation with the mayor and Chad Adams on this as well. But we have to really get moving on this as we go forward. So anyhow, those are some building or district level goals tied into that whole brief presentation that I shared with you and the staff last week. So questions or comments on any of that? And as she's told me, she will put nice slides there so that people can actually understand the hieroglyphics. But I said, well, we'll go with this for now.
The colors tell the story.
Well, I think,
oh, go ahead.
if I look back at the time of your review, we asked you to put together some goals. So now we have them. I think I like what I see.
And I'm sure this is all working through the logistics of it, but will this slow the process down quite a bit? As far as, obviously when one person or a group of 3 or 4 make a decision, it's a lot quicker. Did anything in that book, when you're reading about the one mission, did it talk about different procedures to put in place other than the structure that would help, keep the processes flowing?
Actually, the interesting thing that came about, this all came about because of the war in Iraq and how the insurgency was adapting faster than the Americans. And they said, we are too slow because we have this bureaucratic process. So if we can go and shift to a problem-solving process, we can actually expedite some of the decision-making, which I don't know. So we'll have to see what occurs. Because you're right. I think the more people have input on things, it may have a tendency to slow it down. But I think if we keep the focus in the right areas on student learning and on professional development, I think it could be effective.
I agree. I think this looks great. Looks like you spent a lot of time and energy on your drawings too, of course. I was just wondering, who was on the building leadership teams?
That's a great question. If you were to ask that a year ago, it was different in every building. And so one of the things that we're trying to get, it consists of teachers and the principal. And one of the things that we're trying to do this year is we have PLC facilitators within each building. And they're facilitating the discussions within the PLC. So they're teachers. And then we have a building coordinator. And new this year, we also have instructional coaches that are in the buildings. So the guidance was, this was last spring, we should, since we are becoming more of an instructional focus, it would be good if we had the facilitators, the coordinator, and an instructional coach on the building to leadership team to do this. Now, I don't know if we're there across the district in that yet, but that's the direction we're going on it.
I would say that the first three would make sense. I'm wondering about the fourth one. We have policy. What is our policy as far as maintaining the board balance right now, the fund balance?
It's 14%.
So I don't see a need to have that as a goal when we already have it as policy and it's something that we already work for. The fifth one about the Hammer complex doesn't seem to be a district level goal in my opinion, because I think that will happen anyway and it's kind of a limited scope. Whereas if we look at our pathways to success, I'd rather have a couple goals that are really connected to our pathways to success. I mean, in there it's about increasing growth and proficiency over last year's standardized tests, but there are a lot of different growth and proficiency marks on our pathways to success, and also graduation rates. I'd rather see something in there that's more substantive for our students, tied to our pathways to success.
I think we can add the graduation percentage. When I look at the 14%, I still think that's got to be a goal to maintain that. You know, granted, it's our goal today, but you got to maintain it from year to year to year. So I see that as staying myself. I'm not sure what others think.
I agree, and the hammer is not going to fix itself. It's a huge project, and it's been deteriorating forever, and so it's going to take an active leadership to make it happen, and it's going to be very difficult. So I think it's a good goal, and it just hasn't happened on its own. It's a huge project.
I think like anything, we need, and that's what we're working on now, is developing a plan. Doesn't mean it all happens at once by any means, but if we don't start with a plan, it's going to continue to deteriorate to the point where it is unaffordable.
Okay, if we add the graduation percentage, I think that would be great. Okay.
The only comment I guess I have is about the board fund balance. I know at our retreat we talked about, a couple of us talked about, I mean, I do think it's good to have a healthy fund balance, but like, and I think that it's going to be a non-issue because some of the grants we have are kind of continuous now, which is awesome. So happy to see that. But when we come into an like a situation where we're not sure what the legislation is going to give us, and we're going to make cuts only to do rehires, you know, that might be a time where we might want to dip into that fund balance or potentially dip into it just in case we don't get those funds. I don't want this to get in the way of the possibility of doing that. And no, there was no board vote or no agreement on that, but I know that was just a concept that was brought up. I just wouldn't want this to get in the way of that if that was ever a possibility, you know, that we might dip into it a little bit and be at 12%. If we could keep a teacher, and if we're not sure what the legislation is going to do. However, that's probably less of an issue now, knowing that some of these grants are a little more long-term.
I think Jill and I remember the days of having to do referendums all the time, and those were not so much fun, were they? Okay, any other comments? Okay, thank you. Moving on to facilities update, Steve Anderson.
Just use the arrows? Yep. All right, it's been a while. Hi. Just a quick little overview on the, where we're spending our money, I guess, this year and the plan. You know, the plan includes quite a bit of different things. The HVAC, we're done with that, basically, across the district. But then we also need to incorporate continuous improvement needs. Just kind of an example is heat pumps at the high school. There's 185 heat pumps throughout there. And they're already 17 years old and they're starting to go. So we have a plan, and depending on the size of them, they cost anywhere from $6,000 to $15,000 each to get one and get one installed. So we used to have a continuous plan. We're replacing 6, 7, 8, depending on the size, every year when we collaborate and find our worst ones, hopefully. And so we don't run into too many problems during the school year. Key capital improvement projects this year. It's kind of a poor picture, but I just took it today during the cloudy area. Our biggest one by far was the high school parking lot. It's just shy of $600,000 to redo that whole thing. Yulin Brothers in town did the work. They did a nice job. We had a few little things that they need to clean up, but overall it's in good shape. Our second biggest project was tennis courts, which when they were originally put in, I'm not even sure exactly, it was 04, 05, I think it was. The asphalt was not real good. They had this rock, this shale in there, and it popped all over. I don't know if anybody plays tennis here, but there was little holes, little divots all over. And it was time to redo them. But they look real good now. We got the Everly blue in the middle now, so they like that. That was just, it was like $180,000 for those. So those are our two biggest projects. Otherwise, we put carpeted and special services, 218 and 220 here, where adult basic education is. Purchased new risers for the stage at Hawthorne. They were falling apart, and we're afraid of kids falling off of them. We are going to upgrade the camera system at Hawthorne. We try to do that every year. We've got actually the high school, Southwest, and Halverson are all on the same system. And working to the point we're having all of them on the same system. So actually Ted at the high school would be able to go into any building at any time and find it and, you know, look at footage and find out what's going on. So we're working that way. We did concrete work, most of it's sidewalk work at Southwest, Sibley, and Lakeview. We did some upgrading of controls at the high school and the replacement of heat pumps. Next year, our biggest project's going to be pavement at Southwest and Sibley. At least that's the plan at this point. And the roof it's actually Halverson, sorry about that. Should be Halverson. Actually moved that up a little bit. We did a thermal imaging of the roof at Halverson, and we were hoping to get by a couple more years, but we've got like 22 wet spots in there. So it doesn't mean it's going to fall over or anything like that, but we need to get at it sooner rather than later. Carpeting Lakeview offices, camera upgrade at Lakeview for next year, and the pool covers at the high school about ready to fall apart. So at this point, that's the plan there. You pull up just to pull up the capital plan. It's, I don't want to go through the whole thing, and you can't hardly see there, but just looking across the years, the biggest projects, the red are roofing, the green is parking lots, pavement, yellow is windows. I want to look at changing the windows at Halverson and Lakeview. they're not energy efficient at all. It's really tough to even keep some of those rooms warm during the winter time. Back when they built them back in the 50s and 60s, they didn't really care about energy too much. They're just single pane. I think I went through all those. Kind of that purple one there is at the high school, the pool dehumidification unit is, I hope we can make it last for another 4 years. That's my plan. It's kind of on its last leg, not doing too well. But just as a quick overview, that's the plan. We have a lot more dollars, actually, thanks to long-term facility maintenance. But we do have a lot of needs that we've pushed off for a long time. And if nothing else, it's kind of the hammer situation there. We really don't have funds. If we try to do that with something with our LTF, well, we can't use LTFM money. It's all for maintenance of the schools. We could only use the top part, the capital portion up there, which isn't going to do anything at Hammer. But that's all I had. Unless questions? All right.
No questions? Okay, thanks, Steve. Okay, you can see item 11 is closed session to talk about labor negotiations under Minnesota Statute 13D.03. I would entertain a motion to go into closed session. Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. Okay, second. All those in favor of going into closed session signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.